All right. If you are leading growth, building a startup, or looking to ladder up your skills, then you are probably really busy. So every other week, tune into Growth Snack, the Breakout Growth Podcast short, where Ethan, Garr, and I share one key growth learning to help you on your journey to breakout growth success. It's food for thought for anyone hungry for growth.
All right, Sean. So next week, we have an awesome episode teed up for our audience. We are going to be speaking with Charlie Cole. He is the turnaround CEO who led FTD Flowers since 2020, following their bankruptcy. It's going to be an awesome episode for our listeners. But one thing stood out for both of us. So why don't you tell our listeners what you and I have been so excited to tell them about, why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Mouthful there. So
yeah.
We are, one of the things that really stood out to us is something we see in startups all the time. And so for a turnaround situation, it was interesting to see it as well.
Yeah.
And it's that even the best leaders will try to do too much at once. So it's important to remember that growth does not depend on getting absolutely everything right. It depends on getting the right things right. And that requires just ruthless prioritization of where you focus your energy and your time.
Yeah, I mean, a spoiler alert, you are probably going to mess up a lot of things in growth. I mean, it's just part of the game. So what it comes down to is really kind of getting your order of operations right. And Charlie really talks about this a lot, but it starts with, step by step. You have to understand your customer journey. You have to ensure that everything is instrumented properly, find the highest leverage opportunities, focus, and so on and so forth. And if you don't do those things in the proper order, and if you don't slow down and really focus on what matters, you're probably going to run into all sorts of trouble, and it's going to be almost impossible to grow. So why do you think it is that, I mean, we've seen it so much. Why do you think it is that so many companies try to do too much all at once and fail?
I think it starts with just pressure to hit numbers, and that comes from the very top. So even beyond the CEO, a lot of times it may be that when the CEO was raising that first round of capital or the most recent round of capital, that they overpromised, and now they have to hit those numbers that they promised. Or it might have been that investors said, "We'll invest, but you need to commit to hitting X." And as soon as you have these big aggressive numbers, then those numbers start to guide all of the execution. So you start trying to do everything possible to hit those numbers. And the first thing we think about is, it's going to be based on the channels that are going to work for us. So we need to do a little of this and a little of that. And you start thinking about all the different ways you can acquire those customers. But the truth is that you really only need one channel that can scale to be successful. So it's not necessarily about trying every possible channel, but it's that search for at least one channel that's going to scale. And then sometimes channels are not even where the problem is. Maybe you're having a hard time finding that channel that scales for some other reason. Maybe your conversion is bad, or your retention, or you're unable to monetize.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to dive bomb into all of these things all the time, it's really impossible to put enough focus into any of them to kind of know what really is the problem, what's going to work. You really have to take your time and figure those things out. So how do you figure out what matters? Like, what's in your experience, where do you think like that starts?
I think in a startup in particular, first area you want to look at is retention. And we talk about this a lot. We've had a lot of growth snacks where we talk about product market fit, and it's because it's a super important concept. And so retention is often an indicator of product market fit. And so essentially meaning that someone tries your product, they like it enough that they keep using it over time. And if they do that, then everything in the business tends to work well. But if you have bad retention, there could be a number of factors that lead to that bad retention. It might be that the product is actually really bad. It might be that the product's good, but your onboarding into the product is bad. Getting people to use the product the right way is where the challenge is. So there's a ton of different things that may be causing that retention issue, but the biggest thing you want to figure out is, how do I get the right people to experience my product in the right way?
Yeah, and I think figuring out that that journey from right people to right experience is often complicated by the fact that people don't look at it both quantitatively and qualitatively. I mean, especially in a startup where we're focused on data and instrumentation, it can be really easy, especially, I see it with apps a lot where you have, you look at the funnel and there's some drop off. And like, for example, you're asking for permission, like contact access, address book access. People get there and you see that there's this big fall off there. So you say, oh, we'll just move that. We'll put it after the paywall or something, and that'll solve our problem. But you're just really kicking the problem down the road. You haven't really thought about what is happening in the customer's mind to make them feel that way. So if you're not looking, talking to your customers and analyzing it qualitatively as well, probably going to miss important things like that. So I think there really is this balance between figuring out the right experience and, both quantitatively and qualitatively.
Yeah. And getting that right, figuring out these things is something that probably starts with leadership. So it starts with that CEO of being able to shine the spotlight on what matters in the business. But I think it goes even beyond that to where if you can get everyone across the team on the same page about what matters, and these are the things that we're going to need to figure out in order for this business to be successful, and this is the order in which we need to figure these things out, you're going to be much more likely to be able to solve the really hard problems in the business to be able to unlock growth. And so it's the last thing you want to do when you've got a million things on your plate is to take a step back and look at the big picture of the business. But that's generally what you need to do. And you need to have that shared context, that shared understanding, and then concentrate team resources around those couple of things, those 1, 2, maybe 3 things that really matter in order to put the business on a track to where it can ultimately be successful.
Yeah, I think when in doubt, do less to do more. I think that's a really good just way to approach this. So this is great stuff, but we're running out of time. So I think we should call it there. Thanks everyone for tuning into this week's Growth Snack. Like we said, next week we will have a full episode with Charlie Cole, the FTD turnaround CEO. It's going to be great. I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. So if you're hungry for growth, keep tuning in.